Hey, good afternoon and welcome once again to Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin. We are broadcasting live from the studios of the American Guns and Glory Network here in Las Vegas, Nevada. This show is about guns, related political issues, and self-defense issues. Fired Up with Bob Irwin is on YouTube with a new show every Thursday around 5 p.m. And those shows, when they're online, will stay up forever. The audio feed is rebroadcast for radio listeners on Saturdays at noon on the Nevada Talk Network. They broadcast on 8 or 10 radio stations simultaneously all over the state of Nevada. You can find a list of the stations at www.kely1230.com. And that will direct you to whatever frequency. They're on AM and FM, and it's a whole bunch of stations, but they all broadcast simultaneously the same show at noon on Saturdays. If you have questions or comments about a show, you can send an email to me at bob@firedupmail.com. We do answer any inquiries, questions, or comments by phone or email or whatever, depending on how you contact us. There's a message machine in my office that's 702-257-1060, and we return all the calls if you leave your contact information. Any questions directed to my guests will be forwarded to them. You can send them direct to me or whoever, and I will get them forwarded. Normally at this point I talk about the number of self-defense cases there are in the United States, 200 to 300 and so forth, and use examples of shooting cases. Today's show is going to be a little bit different. This particular episode of Fired Up is dedicated to the current battle we're having over gun rights. Unless you're living under a rock, we've got lots of legislation proposed to take away what are called assault rifles and high-capacity magazines and so on and so on. So my guest today, Don Green, is here to talk about the constitutional issues that are involved. There's just a whole lot going on, and Don's been digging into it all week. So I just want to say up front, there's been a lot of media centering on Dianne Feinstein, preparing to outlaw everything that's semi-automatic and any magazine that holds more than 10 shots. The bill that she is holding to put into Congress, S-2470, does not actually exist yet, so nobody knows what's in it. There are all sorts of things on the media that may or may not be true, but the text of the bill, understanding this, it is probably a bill to amend Title 18 United States Code to prohibit purchase of certain firearms, we know what those are, by individuals under 21 and other purposes. Bills are generally sent to the Library of Congress as a GPO, the government printing office, a day or two after they are introduced on the floor of the Senate. Delays can occur as bills pile up, but no bill is submitted, so we don't know what Dianne Feinstein is putting in the bill. Similar problems here in Nevada. My guest, being a Nevada and California lawyer, is the perfect guy to have on to talk about these gun laws. He's been researching this for 4 or 5 days to try and keep up with all the possible changes. Don, I'm going to turn you loose and we'll start discussing this.
All right, well, thank you. Let's call it the DIFI bill. Here's what the Democrats, principally led by Dianne Feinstein and others, this is what they want to do. They want to outlaw all identified assault rifles, which is specifically those rifles which have high-capacity magazines defined as 10 or more than 10 rounds, including pistols. In the list of proposed weapons, you can practically go to Gun Digest and go through an alphabetical listing of these assault type rifles. Just about every possible configuration of rifle, whether it's Colt, whether it's Ruger, whether it's DPMS Panther, whether it's Delton, whatever, Century Arms, there's a complete list of those. Now, the basis for this is that they want to tell you that it's public safety, but there are no real statistics which back up the public safety argument. So then they fall back on what went on in the Clinton administration. And you point that out in your materials, and it's pointed out in one of the blogs today on The Hill, which is generally kind of a more liberal news blog. But they say that the 10-year ban on assault rifles did work. It started in the Clinton administration and went well into the first several years of the first Bush administration. Yep. That is an assault on the importation of assault weapons or parts to make assault weapons, but other weapons were grandfathered in. They were grandfathered in so you could legally possess those. It became a serious question as whether you could sell or transfer those weapons during that period. But there was no appreciable decrease in the, let's call it the homicide rate using assault rifles during that assault weapon ban. In fact, statistically, it was about the same.
Yeah, I remember reading all the data because I was in the middle of that, having a retail gun shop at the time. And the statistics were so close as to the number of rifles being used in crime or murders, whichever way you wanted to do it, that it was statistically didn't matter. It was like 1/10 of 1% difference, and in some locales it went 1/10 higher, in other locales it went 1/10 lower, and that's what really killed that ban, because it was written in the ban originally that it will expire in 10 years unless Congress renews it.
Yes.
And they didn't renew it because the data said it didn't work.
Yes.
Now we're getting phase 2 of Dianne Feinstein.
That is correct. And even though we're not trying to get political here, but even though the Republicans have got a majority in the House and a slim, razor-thin majority in the Senate, I do not reasonably believe that the Democrats are looking to have this bill passed this coming federal legislative session. They're looking farther down the future. And the reason they're looking down the future is they're looking at what's going to happen in 2018, 2020.
Right.
There's no question whatsoever, in my opinion, and I've been a lawyer 35 years, and we've been involved in gun cases for decades, and you and I have been involved with guns for many years, both professionally and personally related with firearms and being personal and professional friends. There's no question that there's going to be some form of assault weapon ban. It will ban, a lot of people won't be able to obtain them. It'll be an age ban. It'll be a mental health ban. It'll be a military conviction ban. But it's going to happen. There's also going to be possibly a federal waiting period, because in California, and the listeners and the viewers need to take note that the Supreme Court just in the past 2 weeks refused to hear the California case out of the Ninth Circuit up in San Francisco, which upheld California's 10-day waiting period. I've seen in some of the blogs and some of the attorneys with whom I've spoken and communicated, they are firmly convinced that they're going to present that in Congress. There possibly will be a magazine ban, a federal magazine ban. Gun registration may very well be part of all of this. And of course, background checks, that's definitely going to happen. Whether it's going to be in Nevada, we'll talk about that in the next segment. But there's going to be legislation on that, and that, as I see, is going to be part of the bill in which some of the Democratic senators or House members are going to insist that these provisions be put in. Whether or not to be voted is another story.
Yeah, Congress is apparently very, very divided, and they're looking for this 2018 for this next election that's coming up to see who has the majority in the House. And it generally splits on Republicans and Democrats. There are a few Democrats that are against this bill because of the restrictions, a few Republicans that are against the bill because some of the pro-gun stuff isn't strong enough in their opinion. It's pretty well divided evenly, and we are within a few seats in either case of having that. We're going to discuss at the end of this show the political aspects in Nevada. This is one of the few times I'm going to get political at the end of the show and tell you who not to vote for. But that'll come after the break. We're going to stop now for just a short commercial from one of our sponsors. If you'll hang on, we'll be right back. Hi. Now you can get a copy of my recently updated book, The Reality of Armed Self-Defense. This is based on my 40 years experience in evaluating and defending lethal force cases. Learn the rules of using deadly force before you have to guess in the middle of a hostile situation. For Fired Up Special, you can get this book for only $10. If you live outside the first 48, please add appropriate postage. Mail orders can be sent to Bob Irwin, P.O. Box 97413, Las Vegas, Nevada 89193. Thanks for ordering one. And we are back. We're talking about these proposed gun laws, and one thing I wanted to interpose here for viewers that don't know. We will be talking a lot about the Australian program. And for those of you not old enough to remember this, there was a mass shooting in Australia back in 1996, which some guy killed 35 people in Tasmania. The Australian government reacted by outlawing semi-automatic rifles, semi-automatic shotguns, strict licensing and registration requirements, so on and so on. But the cornerstone of that system was a massive, what they called a gun buyback program. The government came in and said, you know, this gun is worth this gun's worth that, and they took them. All these people that owned these guns that fell into the category, which is very close to what we're looking at now with Feinstein, they picked them all up, and the Australian government destroyed them. Now, their idea was it was a buyback. Well, it wasn't a buyback. They never sold the guns to the people that were buying, but that's what they called it. So you'd go in and say, I got a Remington 742, it's semi-automatic, it's capable of holding a longer magazine, therefore it's contraband, or a pump shotgun, because you couldn't have more than 2 in the tube, so everybody went to double barrels and so on. But as they worked their way through outlawing, they purchased 650,000 guns. Minimum, they think it might have been slightly over 1 million, depending on who's counting, because they were doing it all over the country and nobody's keeping track. They put a special tax on firearms and hunting licenses and all sorts of things to finance this thing. And you know what happened? Their murder rate stayed the same.
Yes.
It, just like happened here with our original Feinstein assault weapon ban, it had no effect whatsoever on the gun crime. In Australia, because they got almost all the guns, it really went even further. There were criminal gangs manufacturing submachine guns and single-shot pistols, and and selling them and smuggling them across the border. It's easy to smuggle into Australia because the coastline is like from here to the moon. I read somewhere when Australia was looking to fortify their border, they discovered if they put a soldier, sailor, or whatever on the beach all the way around Australia, if everybody on duty was assigned to that, they'd be a half a mile apart. I mean, it's not defensible for that sort of thing. Anyway, the point was all these people lost their guns and there was zero result, just like Feinstein's ban that ended in 2004. from there, we'll go forward with this.
Okay.
The,
Right. Bob, there's, again, as you point out, the statistics in Australia are that while there was this gun buyback program, this Australian plan espoused by Feinstein now and by Hillary Clinton in her election campaign, the murder rate in Australia is the same per capita. And as you point out in your materials today, by the Duke University public policy experts and Duke University by no means is any conservative think tank, quote, there is no compelling evidence that it saves life, end quote, referring to the gun ban from 1994 to 2004. And of course, everyone's saying that it worked, but it didn't. All it did was freeze those weapons which were in the United States. That's all it did. It did not have any appreciable efforts. And what I think that especially the viewers in Nevada and your listeners in Nevada need to pay attention to what's going on in California right now.
Yep.
And that is that, and I have spoken to several candidates for Assembly and the Nevada Senate in the upcoming elections in November of 2018. They're going to propose an assault ban, assault weapons ban. They're going to propose a 10-day waiting period on all firearm sales. They're going to propose the magazine ban to ban magazines of more than 10 rounds. They're going to go back for gun registration, which was specifically rescinded back in June of 2015, nearly 3 years ago, and they're going to try to go for some form of background checks, although Proposition 1 by constitutional provision can't be challenged for another 2 or 3 years. But additionally, and here's what I found out last night, there are efforts on some legislative enactments, both federal and state, on all those 80%er guns which are out there.
Yep.
Those are the assault rifles where you can buy the lower receivers and buy the tooling to mill them, and then you can buy the jigs or have them professionally done. As long as you have 3 requirements, you buy it for yourself, you know what you're buying, and you know what you're making. But you have to make it for yourself. But who's to say once you've made that 80%er that you're going to keep it? By law, you can't sell it. You'd have to do some kind of registration. California already has that. California already has a law for the registration of non-serialized weapons, regardless of the type. California already has a provision. The failure to bring in, even if you put in your serial number as Mickey Mouse 555, is going to be registered in California, and if the registration number is already taken, something else will happen. But also, if they find out that it is an assault rifle and the serial number hasn't been registered, you may also be facing felony charges for failure to register it as an assault rifle. So there's a second crime. So I see that happening in Nevada, probably as in the next several months. And we've got 9.5 months until the election.
Yeah. We're looking at California as a microcosm of what's going to happen in Nevada. Obviously, the federal bill is going to be a bigger problem. Whatever gun registration and you can't own this, you can't own that they have in California, right now, you can move to Nevada and take your guns and sell your house, change your job, whatever, pull your kids out of school. It's possible to go to a state that still allows assault weapons, modern military rifles. The issue to me is the bigger problem is the federal problem.
Yes.
Because you can't legally export guns, and so you can only move from state to state with them or send them to your cousin in Iowa or whatever the case may be. But if the federal stuff goes through, there's no place to go. Your guns simply will become a crime to possess.
Yes.
And the litigation for that will, in areas where they have had the problem already, Oakland and so forth, where they've gone through and just stopped people. And, well, we heard a rumor that you have an AR-15 in your house, Don, and we heard a rumor and we want to search your house. And we've got 3 people that said they saw an AR-15 in your house. So what do you do then?
That's possibly coming, and perhaps in the next segment, we'll go to, well, I believe that, again, your viewers and your listeners should pay attention to a lawsuit which was filed only 48 hours ago in federal court in California, United States versus California, and its potential ramifications on gun rights.
We'll do that. We've got one more segment to go, about another 8 or 9 minutes of show. So we're going to break here again for a word from one of our sponsors. And then we're going to talk about what's happening in California and what may happen here. And I'm going to get more political than I normally do. So don't go away. We'll be back. Hi. If you keep a firearm in your home or carry one for personal protection, it is incredibly important to get some training and keep up with changes in the law. My friend Maggie Mordaunt, owner of Homeland Personal Protection, is the place to go. Maggie teaches at Bass Pro as well as the Clark County Shooting Park and major gun shows here in Clark County and in Reno. You can check out her classes at ccwmaggie.com. That's ccwmaggie.com. Training is necessary. Thank you. And we are back with this episode of Fired Up. We're going to comment here in Nevada. Our state is divided almost as sharply as the federal Congress is, and most of the people running for this or that I've met over the years and whatever. And here in Nevada, if the Democrats win the election, meaning they win the governorship or the attorney general, will be in the same position as the California is right now, with this looming over, you can't do anything with your guns but move. The new governor, if he wins, Steve Sisolak, we've met several times. He has come out for a lot of things I don't like, but on the gun issue, he says, no, we're going to have background checks, even though the FBI refused to do them. That's a dead issue. He's actually going after Adam Laxalt for not enforcing it when he can't enforce it. It's the FBI who won't do the background checks. But he's running against Laxalt, who's also running for governor, as if it's Laxalt's choice, not a legal opinion. I'm assuming Steve Sisolak isn't a lawyer, or he would know better. His new attorney general, if their slate wins, will be Aaron Ford, who is possibly the most anti-gun legislator we have in our assembly in Nevada, or our Senate in Nevada. And just this week, it was reported in the Review-Journal from the campaign manager of Kate Marshall, who is now running for lieutenant governor. She applauded Australia's gun confiscation program. She called it that, here, the gun confiscation program. So eliminating military rifles and magazines is at the top of the list for the Democrat slate, and it goes all the way down to every assembly and Senate candidate you can imagine. The state is very evenly divided for registered Republicans and Democrats and independents. We may end up being California. The bigger danger to me is Feinstein's bill, because under that bill, it would be national. There's no place to even move. You simply lose your guns. The point of this short tirade here is you can stop this not by burying your guns in your backyard, by voting. If the people who want to be independent citizens rather than subjects of the government don't vote, you are voting in a totalitarian government that's going to take your guns. That's just as straightforward as I can put it. Now I've had my rant. Charge on.
Well, Bob, just a moment ago, you mentioned if this Feinstein bill becomes the law. 48 hours ago, the United States filed a lawsuit in federal court in California in which the government says that under the Supremacy Clause, it is up to the United States and its agencies to enforce immigration laws.
Yes.
I have read that decision, that case very carefully. And all you have to do is cut out about 10 paragraphs of the 20-plus page lawsuit and insert Second Amendment or Feinstein, and you have a lawsuit against the state of Nevada in the event that the Feinstein bill becomes the law and states, independent states, Texas, Oklahoma, Montana, refuse to enforce the laws. You have the perfect court vehicle, legal vehicle, to attack the states. All you have to do is cut and paste it. And I thought about that the other night, and absent a veto and overcoming the veto by two-thirds majority, if it becomes the law, then the federal government will have, regardless of the politics, you will lose these weapons if it becomes the law. And that's what they want to do. And it's this social engineering, what you're talking about. It's, and does it violate the Second Amendment? Well, the Second Amendment says, and it's in two clauses, about the well-regulated militia. We've heard that argument until we're blue in the face. It says, the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. The word infringed means acted upon in a negative way, canceled, or otherwise taken away. But we have many infringements on gun rights. Right now, there are over, in the United States, the 50 states, the territories of the United States, and the United States Code, there are over 15,000 laws which regulate in some fashion one or more firearms. Over 15,000. So we already have that regulation. The issue then becomes, what is reasonable regulation? And I think that that's what the courts in the liberal states are going for, like California. And I think that the United States Supreme Court is waiting for that one case where someone has an actual injury, sort of like Elizabeth Duncan in California, whose magazines were being taken away forcefully, that she's got three choices. Give them to law enforcement, give it to an approved FFL, or take them out of state, which is an absolute absurd requirement of the law. But it's also that it's also a taking. What is the value of a 30-round magazine on the street? 25, 30 bucks at a cheap one at a gun show. But what is its true value to its owner? And that's where I think that the United States Supreme Court is waiting for that one decision, where that one case where someone has an appreciable injury, and that's Elizabeth Duncan right now at the Ninth Circuit. And if they rule against her, which is a strong probability, and it goes to the U.S. Supreme Court, I think that your conservative members of the U.S. Supreme Court will go together and rule against the Ninth Circuit. But I think that's what they're waiting on right now. But again, voters need to use their ballot, use their franchise as legal voters, to take that franchise to its limit and vote their conscience, and vote, don't vote with your gun, but vote with your conscience.
You have to. That's the way we change things in our republic. And when we get to, you know, one of the reasons I'm getting more political here, but I won't. I'll save that for the next show. What Don is saying is absolutely correct. We can don't leave yourself in the position where the police are coming to get your guns and you got to decide to run or hide or live in the mountains or whatever. Vote. Get your friends to vote. Drive somebody else of like-minded conservatism to the polls. That way you get 2 votes for every one that you do, right? We can win this by simply exercising our right to vote. Please make sure, we're going to talk about this once or twice in the future anyway.
Yes.
We lose California, or we lose Nevada like California's going. We're in a world of hurt, guys. I thank you very much for listening to Fired Up. Our next week's show will feature Lenny Davis, who's one of my regular guests. And then we've got the next show after that, a retired Metro officer, detective, who will lend a lot of information to this. I think you'll find it very interesting. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week.